Okay, gentlemen. Erev Shabbat Shalom. Leil Shishi. It's a holy time to learn Parashat Shavua. Today's class is being sponsored in part by my dear nephew, Shmuel Jacobs, in honor of the Rabbi, Chazaku Baruch, and by Mr. Roman Shimonov, in memory of Tanir Bat Belor and Chaim Shaul Ben Esther, and also Vivian Bat Ruch, Adonai Terhem Began Eden. Okay, anyway, so we're in Parashat Vayetze, and like the title of today's class says, we're going to be discussing Lavan Ha'arami. Lavan, not so white after all. Now, obviously, we all know who Lavan was. If anybody doesn't know who Lavan was, just to get the family lineage, he was the brother of Rivka Imenu, and he's the uncle of Yaakov Avinu. And B'ezrat Hashem, in this week's parasha, he also becomes his father-in-law. So we're going to learn a little about the life and legacy of Lavan Ha'arami. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to reveal some secrets that I found in the Chachamim. So anyway, so just to begin, as an introduction to the class, the question that always bothered me was, why did Yaakov have to go through this ordeal with Lavan? We know the story with Lavan. Lavan tricked Yaakov many times. He changed his maskoret, which is the money that he has to pay him. He switched, his two daughters. Instead of giving him Rachel like he asked, he gave him Leah. And he just an all-around bad guy. So my question was, as an introduction to the class, why did Yaakov have to go through this torture with Lavan? And even to make the question even stronger, right after Yaakov gets the brachot from his father, you would think he would have an easy life. That was the point of the brachot. All these are positive brachot, and all of a sudden, the moment he leaves his father's house, only negativity. Esav is chasing him to kill him. Lavan is chasing him to kill him. Then his daughter Dinah gets raped. Then what happens? Then his son Yosef disappears. He thinks he's dead for over 20 years. A lot of bad happens to Yaakov right after he gets the brachot. So my question is, why does Yaakov have to go through this ordeal in order to suffer, in order to in his life before even the good kid thing? Does anybody know how many years of good Yaakov has? 17. Only 17 years of his life towards the end does he describe as good years. So my question was, why? Why is he suffering so much that only the last years of his life does he say that he finally had peace and tranquility? So I saw Sfat Emet. Sfat Emet comes along and he says, by answering this question, he asks another two questions. And he says, number one, we Jewish people have emunah, we have faith in God. And when it comes to our parnasah, when it comes to our livelihood, part of our belief system is that nobody can take what belongs to me. And therefore, if I truly believe that my business is in God's hands, then I don't have to resort to, trickery or cutting corners and things like that. Therefore, says Sfat Emet, why did Yaakov feel a need to take the brachot away from Esav? Listen, at the end of the day, if the brachot are coming to you, they're going to come to you anyway. Therefore, why does Yaakov feel a need to take the brachot if something belongs to him anyway? You know what it's like? One time, I was studying in Israel. As part of my study regimen, we had to do what's called Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. That means that you basically sit next to the rabbis, the great rabbis, and you kind of learn from their ways. And one time I was sitting next to a great rabbi, and all of a sudden somebody walks in, and he was complaining. He goes, "Rabbi, I've had a grocery store business for many years. In Israel, they call it a makolet. A makolet is like a mini supermarket. I've had a makolet for many years, and Baruch Hashem, I was doing well." He goes, "Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, I find out that somebody opened up a makolet right down the block." He goes, "Rabbi, how am I supposed to act towards this? The fact that the guy opened up, maybe he's going to take away my business instead of everybody coming to me for their milk, for their eggs, for their soda, for their whatever. Now people might go to him. Maybe he has cheaper prices." The rabbi told him, he goes, "Do you believe in God?" The man says, "Yes, I believe in God." He goes, "Well, if that's the case, Hashem is not going to take away your. Hashem has plenty of parnasah to give that guy, to give you, and then you have no reason to worry that he might come along. Even though he opened up a business next to you, you don't have to worry." One time I was talking to a real estate lawyer, and he told me now it's being very, very famous, put into contracts, that if a guy buys a building or he buys a business, he puts it into the clause that if this guy's telling him the building has another real estate somewhere else, and if it's within the next 5 miles of this current property, you're not allowed to give him a similar business that he's opening up in the 5-mile radius. Why? Because we're worried that if he opens up another business that he owns somewhere else, that guy might be in competitive parnasah. Therefore, Hashem says, don't worry. If it's coming to you, it's coming to you. That even might be the store of 47th Street. Look at 47th Street. You have 10,000 guys doing the same exact thing. And yet still, what do we see? That all those 10,000 people, at least the way I see it, they're making money. Why? Because Hashem says, at the end of the day, I provide the parnasa. And if it's I provide the parnasa, there's no reason for you to look at ways in order to get around it. Therefore, it says, my question is, why does Yaakov Avinu feel a need to go and steal the barachot away from Esav? If you're supposed to get it, you're going to get it. That's question number one. Question number two, which is the question we asked last week, and we actually gave 4 beautiful answers. Ayin Sham, why does Yitzhak feel a need to bless Esav in the first place? So we gave 4 beautiful answers. Sfat has a different mahalach, and he says as follows, and listen up because this is the yisod in life, I think. He says that if I had to categorize Avodat Hashem in 2 categories, what would those 2 categories be? Category A is serving God with what's called Sur Merah, and category B is serving Hashem with what's called Aseh Tov. There's the Sur Merah category and there's the Aseh Tov category. What does that mean? The Sur Merah category is people who serve Hashem, but they have a difficult time with it. Why do they have a difficult time? Because the Yetzer Hara is great. Their job in this world is not to necessarily serve Hashem by growing. Their job in serving Hashem is keeping away from the bad. And therefore they have a challenge, they have a constant challenge. A guy is always challenged. It's hard for him to stay away from non-kosher food. It's hard for him to keep Shabbat. It's hard for him to watch his eyes. Those are the people that serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the category of Sur Merah. That our job is only to stay away from the bad stuff, and staying away from the bad stuff, that is our challenge. And the people who serve God with the Sur Merah, their life is a constant battle. They're always constantly battling the different things in life. They have a hardship of a life because they're under the category of Sur Merah. However, there's another category of Aseh Tov. The Aseh Tov guys, they have a good time. Why? Because for the Aseh Tov guys, they don't have the Yetzer Hara to do sin. Their challenge is to grow. And therefore, they don't have the concept, they're not in the mood to do Haverot. Therefore, their only job is only to be Od Yer Tov, Od Yer Tov, like the song. Just in order to add just more and more good to them. For them, they just sit in the Beit Midrash and they just grow. They have an easier time learning Torah and being Mosif because they have a better life. They're the Aseh Tov guys. Says Vatemet that if I had to categorize these 2 categories in our twin brothers, Esav was the Sur Merah guy. He had the hard time in life. His job was to stay away from the bad. Yaakov Avinu, he was the Aseh Tov. All Yaakov Avinu had to do was just constantly, wasn't in the mood of doing sin. Therefore for him, all he had to do was sit in the Beit Midrash and just always grow. Says Vatemet, but what happened? Yaakov saw that Esav wasn't doing his job as the Sur Merah. He was at the opposite. The Sur Merah, you're supposed to subjugate the sin to be subjugated to you. What happened? Esav was being subjugated to the sin, and therefore he was constantly making averot. Instead of doing his job, serving Hashem with the Sur Merah, he was falling under. And then Yaakov said, he goes, Esav, you're failing as the Sur Merah. Therefore now I have to adopt not only my way of serving God, of the Aseh Tov, to be just Mosif Od Yer Tov, now I have to take the responsibility of you as well. Therefore says Fatemet, when Yaakov Avinu's kavanah was, when he bought the Bechor, not only was he buying Bechor, not only was he buying the Bechor, he was also buying the Sur Merah from Esav. Oh, says Fatemet, now I understand. Why did Yitzhak want to bless Esav? At the end of the day, he was a Rasha. What is he needed for? Says Fatemet, because Esav was a Sur Merah type of guy, and his life was going to be full of challenges, therefore Yitzhak said, since his life is going to be full of challenges, I have to give him barachot in order to help him serve me. But Yaakov, he's an Aseh Tov, he doesn't need the barachot. Now all of a sudden, once Yaakov bought the barachot also, and he bought the Sur Merah, now he has the Aseh Tov, he said, Abba, that's why I need to take this barachot away from Esav. Esav doesn't need it anymore. Esav, he's being subjugated by the sin. He is the sin. Therefore, since I need both, since I am both the Aseh Tov and the Sur Merah, that's why I need to take the barachot away from Esav. And based on this, he says, unbelievable. He says that Yaakov is referred to in Torah literature as what's called Bihar Ba'avot. What does it mean, Bihar Ba'avot? He's the choices of the fathers. You have Abraham, Yitzhak, you have Yaakov. Yaakov is the highest. Why is this Fatemet? Because Yaakov is the only one of the forefathers that served God with both these categories. He was the only one that was a Sur Merah, was also one that was the Aseh Tov. Therefore, that's why he's considered Bihar Ba'avot. Now he goes even further and he says that's why Yaakov had to suffer. We asked the original question, why did Yaakov have to suffer so much? He had Lavan, he had Dinah, he had Yosef, he had Esav, all these things that are suffering, says Fatemet, because now I understand. Because since Yaakov is serving God, B'Bechinat Sur Merah, and Sur Merah type of guys, they have a difficult life. That's why Yaakov's life got difficult after he got the barachot. Because now since he was serving Hashem with dual types of roles, therefore he had to suffer in his life. Therefore says Fatimet, I'll take it even a step further. Now watch, he says unbelievable. He says that whoever your soulmate is, that means that they serve Hashem similar to the way you serve Hashem. Therefore, says Sfat Emet that Rachel Imenu, she was the soulmate of Yaakov because she was the Aseh Tov, and so was Yaakov. Leah, if anybody knows, was supposed to marry Esav in the beginning. Why? Because just like Esav was a Sumerah, so is Leah. And therefore it was supposed to be soulmate-wise. Leah belonged to Esav and Rachel belonged to Yaakov. What happened? After Yaakov bought the Sumerah from Esav, now Yaakov takes on dual roles. That's why Yaakov married the two sisters, because now he's both Sumerah and Aseh Tov. Now he has to marry both of them. And therefore says Sfat Emet, now we understand that if you pay attention closely, the children of Leah, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun, they had very difficult lives. Because since these 6 Shibatim are a product of Sumerah, that's why if you look closely in the history, they had very difficult lives. Reuven, he had the whole balagan, the switching of the beds. He also had a whole balagan because he lost the Kohen status and he lost his Bechor status. So therefore Reuven had a difficult life. Shimon had difficult life because of Benot Shittim and also the fact that he fought Shechem ben Hamor. Levi, the same item, and also he has no Chelek ben Achalat. You look at all the history, all the 6 kids of Leah, very difficult life. And therefore the reason for that is Sfat Emet, is because they were the product of 2 Sumeras. Therefore when that happens, you have a challenging life. And therefore says Sfat Emet that obviously we don't know what category we fall into. He says, but when a person has a certain pull or gravity towards certain, either to keep away from certain sins, or he has a gravity pull towards certain mitzvot, you can categorize your life in either the category of Sumerah or Aseh Tov. And therefore, to answer our original question, why was Yaakov's life so difficult? The answer is because he bought the Bechor from Esav. He took on the role of serving God like Esav. Therefore, he was both Sumerah and Aseh Tov. That is the introduction to the class based on the Sfat Emet. But getting back to the point, I want to discuss Lavan. So we know that Lavan was Rasha. I want to give you many examples of what kind of person he was. The question that always bothered me was as follows. Let's say, for argument's sake, you're dating a girl. And all of a sudden, after you date the girl, you work for her for 7 years, and now it's time to get married to her. And next thing you know, you wake up in the morning, and it's not her. Your father-in-law, very trickily, he switched her with her older sister. Now, what most people would do is they would take the father to court. They take the father to Beit Din. Listen, I work for this one. You gave me that one. That is a clear indication that I have to take you to Beit Din. So my question was, Yaakov, why aren't you taking Lavan to court? Why not sue your father-in-law? Tell him, listen, I worked for Rachel. You gave me that. Is that a fair assumption? I get it. It's emunah, and I get it. You have emunah, but it doesn't mean you have to be taken advantage of. So, exactly. It's considered a faulty sale, therefore I want my money back. So why don't we see that Yaakov takes Lavan to court? So he says unbelievable. The Rosh brings down from Dat Zikenim. He says, I'll tell you why. He goes, a lot of times, he says, any decent lawyer could get Lavan out of this predicament. Why? Because he says Lavan was so smart, he was such a big trickster, that he put into the clause of the contract between him and Yaakov that even if he switched Rachel for Leah, which he did eventually, he wouldn't get caught. Why not? Because if you pay attention to the Pesukim, Yaakov comes to Lavan, he tells him, I'm going to work for your daughter. But pay attention to the words, he says, I'm going to work for Bitcha Ketana, from your younger daughter. Now, how does, the way I understand it, from your younger daughter means, so who's younger between the 2 sisters? Rachel is younger than Leah, and therefore I deserve Rachel. But it says the Rosh, he goes, no. Lavan could come along and say, no, hold on a second. I didn't think that you meant age-wise, because the Midrash says that who was taller? Who was taller? Midrash says that Rachel was actually taller than Leah was. And therefore, when Yaakov came along, he said, I'm working for your Bitcha Ketana. Even if he would have taken Lavan to court, Lavan said, what do you want from me? He said Bitcha Ketana. I thought he was referring to height, not age. And since Leah was shorter than Rachel, when he said Bitcha Ketana, I thought he was referring to Leah. And therefore says Yaakov, there's no point of me taking my father-in-law to court, because even if I take him to court, he's going to win, because he's going to come along, he's going to say, Bitcha Ketana, I meant age, he meant height. And therefore, go fight it out now. So therefore, he was such a trickster that even within the words, even within Yaakov Avinu's claim himself, he came along and he said, Bitcha Ketana, really meant short, even though Yaakov meant in age.
He knew that Rachel had the signs. They're not stupid. They're all not stupid.
Okay, but bottom line is, that's how he explains it. The reason why he didn't take him to court is because within the claim of Yaakov, he said he meant really the shorter, even though Yaakov meant in age. Continue. Going on.
Also, Lavan said Bechira whenever he came back to her. He said, didn't say Gedolah.
Right, exactly, the choice, exactly. So it's move on to Pesukim.
Yeah.
Moving on. I want to turn to the first source on the page, on the sheet itself. So now let's get back to the story. What happens? Yaakov works for Lavan for many years, and after he gets married to Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, he has all his kids, or most of them at least. And also he comes to his wives in the middle of the night. He says, "Listen, I know that your father's not treating me the way he used to. We have to leave. We have to get out." So he takes all his kids, he takes all his money, he packs out, and he leaves. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, Lavan notices that his kids and his grandkids are gone, and he chases after them. He finally catches up with Yaakov later on in the parasha towards the end, and he has two claims on Yaakov Abinu. Two claims on Yaakov. The two claims are very simply: number one, why didn't you let me kiss my kids goodbye? And number two, Lama ganafta et Elokai. Why did you steal my idols? Now this is a side point. How did you understand that pasuk of how did you steal my idols? What idols do you think he was talking about? I always thought as a kid on a very simple level, well, since we know a story, since we know that Rachel took them, and where did she hide them? She hid them in her bag. So I figured the idols were like these little terafim, these little trinkets that we had that he bowed down to. And how wrong was I? Because I saw a Perusha, the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. He says, no, you know what these idols were? These were some serious idols. He says, back in the day, how did they serve these people? He said that in order to be considered the idol, you had to find, listen carefully, you had to find the Bechor, the son of a Bechor. So you had to have two Bechors. I'm not talking about animals, I'm talking about human beings. So you had to find a person that he himself was the firstborn, the son of a firstborn, and they would take that person, they would slaughter him, they would decapitate him, they would take his head, and they would smear it in oil and salt. And then they would take a solid sheet made out of gold, and they would write a certain shame of Tumah, a certain negative name of the evil powers, and they would take that piece of gold and they would put it under the head's tongue. And then they would nail that head to the wall, and this is the head that they would worship as Avodah Zarah. And when they would ask the head questions, the head would even answer them and reveal secrets and tell about the future, because bottom line is, since he had the Shem, this negative name under his tongue, he was able to perform this heebie-jeebie type of stuff. And therefore, this terafim that Lavan was referring to was this head that he was missing from his house. Coincidentally, the rabbis tell us that's why, if you ever think about it, after Esav swears in last week's parasha that he's going to kill Yaakov, and all of a sudden we find it that Yaakov leaves, and who chases after Yaakov? Anybody know? Eliphaz does. It always bothered me. Well, Esav, you swore that you're going to kill Yaakov, so what are you sending your son to kill him? How about you don't kill him yourself? Says the rabbis, based on the fact that we know who was the Avodah Zarah of Lavan, Esav was like, hold on a second, I'm very scared over here. Because if Lavan's Avodah Zarah is the Bechor, the son of a Bechor, Esav says, that's who I am. I'm a Bechor, the son of a Bechor. I'm the firstborn of Yitzhak, and Yitzhak is also a firstborn. I'm afraid that if I chase Yaakov and Lavan sees me, what's going to happen? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's the firstborn of Sarah. And therefore, he's going to cut off my head and make me the Avodah Zarah.
Eliphaz is not the firstborn?
Oh, I'll answer that question. He doesn't care about Eliphaz. So therefore,
He's no longer before also, he said.
oh, maybe on the paper he is, but physically he's the Bechor. Therefore, Esav didn't want to chase Yaakov because he said, if I chase Yaakov and Lavan sees me, he's going to sacrifice me as his next terafim. Therefore, he didn't chase him. Oh, so now we say like this. Now we understand what the terafim were. Go back to the Pesukim. What bothered me was as follows. Look inside the first source on the page. Apparently, the night before Lavan chases Yaakov, Lavan has a prophecy. What's the prophecy? Hashem comes to Lavan in a dream, and Hashem tells, maybe not in a dream, maybe even just like that, he tells Lavan, don't chase Yaakov. Look in the Pesukim. Lavan makes a claim. Claim number one, he says, Velo nechashtani lenashek lebanai ublerotai. You did not let me kiss my kids and my grandkids. Next pasuk, he tells him this prophecy. What was the prophecy? Yesh le'el yadi la'asot imachem ra. He goes, I wanted to do bad to you. However, ve'eluhai avichem emesh amar elai. But your God told me yesterday, le'mor hisham elecha, be very careful, and daber im Yaakov mitov va'adra. Don't do to Yaakov, not good, not bad. So therefore, he puts in a prophecy. And all of a sudden, his second claim is, V'ata halachti ki nichsafti, lebeit avicha lama ganafta et Elokai. Why did you steal my idols? My question is very, very simple. Why did Lavan stick in the middle of these two claims of number one, you didn't let me kiss my kids, number two, you stole my idols? He sticks in this prophecy of God told me, God appeared to me and told me to tell you that I can't do nothing to you, not good, not bad. If you're going to tell Yaakov the prophecy, tell him the prophecy first, and then tell him his two claims of you didn't let me kiss my kids and why did you steal my idols? You understand the question? I'm not going to continue until you guys understood this good. Number one, why is Lavan putting inside the two claims this prophecy of that God came to him? In order to answer this question, I found another 3 or 4 that we have to answer, and it's all going to be one answer to the same question. First of all, I didn't understand. So Lavan, who is he claiming who stole his idols? Who's he claiming? Yaakov stole his idol. That's what he's claiming. My question was, Lavan, what are you getting so worked up for? Meaning to say, we don't find it in the Torah or in the Midrash that Lavan even bothered to look for his idols. You see, the moment he noticed it was missing, right away, what did he do? He went to chase after Yaakov. Why did you steal my idols? Listen, Lavan, relax. Maybe you had a cleaning lady that day. Maybe the cleaning lady, she took it from you and sent somebody else. Always happens in my house. The moment something's missing or after the cleaning lady, who took it? Cleaning lady took it. So therefore, my question is, Lavan, you're missing your terafim, right? Why is it not all of a sudden you believe that Yaakov took it? Why don't you relax, look around the house, and then chase after Yaakov? Question number 1. Question number 2, why would you even suspect Yaakov of taking it? I mean to say, the guy lived with you for over 20 years. He's your domot. He's your son-in-law, right? He only did good for you. He only was honest with you. And you come along and you tell me that, it must be that my son-in-law took it. Question number 2. Question number 3, what even will be the benefit of Yaakov taking the terafim? I mean to say that, what does Yaakov have to do with it? You know, Eliezer, in last week's parasha, 2 weeks ago, we see that Eliezer didn't want to even go inside the house of Bituel and Lavan until they got rid of the Avodah Zarah. So why would Yaakov be any different? What would Yaakov need for these idols? You know what the answer is? Unbelievable. This is a profound answer. In a few weeks' time, we're going to read in Parashat Vayera with the plagues. After the plague of Barad, what was the plague of Barad? That was the hailstones. So Paro couldn't take it anymore, so he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, get rid of these hailstones. I can't take it anymore, pray to your God and tell him to take it away. Pasuk tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't pray inside Egypt. What did he do instead? He left Egypt in order to pray that Hashem take away the Barad outside of Egypt. And rabbis ask, why not pray inside of Egypt? What does Rashi answer? She says he couldn't pray inside of Egypt. Why not? Because since in Egypt it was filled with terafim, it was filled with idols. Therefore, where there's idols, Hashem doesn't rest his presence. Therefore, he had to leave Egypt in order to pray. Based on that, Shia rabbis tell us, also, you're telling me that any time there is terafim, there is no Hashem. Lavan comes to Yaakov and Lavan tells him, Yaakov, I have a proof that you took my idols. What's my proof? Because what in the world is Hashem coming to me as prophecy? Hashem never appeared to Lavan as prophecy before. Therefore, says Lavan, it must be the reason why Hashem is appearing to me and not to you is because I don't have the terafim anymore. That's why he didn't bother to look for it, because he knew right away the fact that God isn't even coming to me. It must be that there's no idol. I don't have to blame my cleaning lady that she took it. I must not have it. Why? Because God is talking to me. And my proof that God is talking to me because I don't have the idols. And the fact that he didn't come to you, what does that mean? That means that you must have it. That's why he didn't come to you. Therefore, says the rabbis, now I understand the answer to the questions. You're right. The reason why he didn't look for it because he knew he was gone. The reason why he suspected his son-in-law because he must have it. The reason why he must have it is because God is not talking to him. That is a incredible answer of the Rabbanim. So the Musar that I learned from here, by the way, is we don't see Laban was Choser B'Tshuva, by the way. Yeah. It wasn't Choser B'Tshuva. The moment he got rid of the Avodah Zarah, all of a sudden Hashem appears to him. What does that teach me? That teaches me that even if a person doesn't necessarily do teshuvah, but he gets rid of the tumah that's inside of him or inside his house, that already allows him to have a connection with Hashem. You know, I saw an unbelievable story with Chacham Ovadia. They say that he was huge in getting kids switched from public school to yeshiva. That was one of his goals in life, was to get all the kids in public school to switch them over to yeshiva. And this was a goal in life of his. I even saw a story that one time he got on a helicopter to give a shiur somewhere, and on the way there, in the middle of the helicopter, he had a heart attack. So they had to land in somebody's private backyard before they took him to the hospital. So as they land in this random guy's backyard, the guy came out to greet the chief rabbi as, again, he's having a heart attack. And the guy comes to him and he wishes the rabbi well, so they called him a taxi to take him to the hospital. And right before he gets in the taxi, he asks the guy, he goes, wait, before I get into the taxi, excuse me, where do you send your kids to yeshiva? Imagine that. Imagine a guy's in the middle of having a heart attack, and he's more concerned of the guy that he just landed a helicopter in his backyard. Where is he sending his kids? Do he send it to yeshiva, or do you send it to public schools? So therefore, it was a big thing with the Rabbi Vadia. That's how much he cared for people. So anyway, so one time to tell a story of his, that he was giving a shiur somewhere, and after the class, someone came up to him and said, Rabbi, I want to, I accept your words. I want to send my kids from public school to yeshiva, but you should know I've tried before, and the yeshiva doesn't want to take my kids. He goes, why not? He goes, because they claim I have a TV in my house. So he says, so get rid of the TV. He goes, yeah, I want to get rid of the TV, but my wife doesn't. So Rabbi Vadia says, I'll be at your house tonight, and I'm going to try to convince your wife. Now you have to imagine, Rabbi Vadia at this point, he's the chief rabbi of Israel. He's the most popular guy in the entire land. He has a billion things to do. The guy didn't believe him. He didn't believe the chief rabbi is going to come to his house. So he goes home, and he tells him, listen, there might be a knock on the door. I doubt it, but there might be a knock on the door. And all of a sudden, half an hour later, there's a knock on the door. He opens it, and there's Rabbi Vadia in his big day kihuna, and he tells me, he goes, listen, he goes, I heard that you want to get your kids in yeshiva, but I heard there's a TV in the house. So right away, he didn't have to say anything. The fact that the chief rabbi came all the way to my house in order to tell me, to convince me to get rid of the television, she got rid of the television immediately. And not only that, but he himself, with his back problems, lifted the TV up with the Baal Habayit, and they took it to the trash. So you see the story that the moment you get rid of the tumah, you're right away zochet to the special connection with Hashem. That could even translate into us, that, a person might say to himself, it's very difficult for me to get a filter on my phone. But the bottom line is, the moment you get that filter, the moment you goresh, the moment you throw out even the slightest tumah, just like Lavan, he got rid of the tumah, not even on purpose. He got rid of the tumah because it was stolen. Still, he was zochet. So the moment the person gets a filter on his phone, or the moment he gets rid of, the samich mem, of the social media and the TikTok and the Instagram, the moment these things happen, he's already zochet to some sort of light that Hashem says, I want to have a special connection with this guy, even though he's not necessarily doing teshuvah, but just like Lavan, who had this prophecy because he got rid of the Avodah Zarah, so to over here, he's zocheh to the special connection because he got rid of the tumah. The second thing I learned from here is by Yaakov. The Yaakov didn't know he had the tumah on him. He had no idea. Rachel stole the terafim. And even though he didn't know about it, Hashem didn't appear to him. What does that tell me? That even though a person doesn't know that he has tumah around him, still that affects the relationship with him and Hashem. He doesn't know it's there, but Hashem says, even though you don't know it's there, the relationship is affected. They tell a story with Yaakov Abu Hatzera, that one time he was staying in a person's house, and he said that he sat down to learn in the person's house, and for some reason learning wasn't going. He opened the book, he couldn't understand. Something never happened to him before. Opens the book, doesn't understand. He's like, you know what, maybe I'm tired, let me take a break. Takes a 20-minute break, comes back, starts to learn, doesn't understand. He's looking all over the place. What could it be? Why am I not understanding? All of a sudden he sees a picture on the wall, and the picture was the picture of the guy, the Balabait's father. And he tells me, he goes, who is that? He goes, it's my father. He goes, tell me about him. Turns out the guy was a chronic sinner. He goes, listen, do me a favor, take down the picture. He takes down the picture. The moment he takes down the picture, obviously he opens the book, and the spring was open. So even though you don't know the tumah is necessarily there, but the tumah has a tremendous effect on you. I saw another story. He told a story by Chaim Pinto last week. I saw another story by him. He says that one time Rabbi Chaim Pinto was traveling somewhere in Morocco, and there was a guy. I think I told the story before. He was a salesman of metal salesman, like scrap metal. He wasn't making good parnasa. And one day, he meets an Arab salesman. The Arab salesman tells him, listen, I want to give you a very good deal on a certain piece of metal. He goes, this is an incredible deal, I'll take it. So he tells me, he goes, you know what? He goes, I see you having a hard time with parnasah. I have a segula for you. He takes out another piece of metal. He goes, do me a favor, put this piece of metal down. As long as you light 2 candles by the side of this piece of metal, I guarantee you're going to have parnasah, you're going to have a lot of haslachah. So the guy does it. He takes out the piece of metal every single morning. He lights 2 candles by the side, and his business began booming. Right away, the guy became a millionaire overnight. All of a sudden, Rabbi Chaim Pinto, he's traveling in this town. The moment he gets there, he feels something in the air. He says, there's something wrong in this town. He asks the people, he goes, does anybody here serve Avodah Zarah? He goes, we're a religious neighborhood, what are you talking about? He goes, did anybody here become rich all of a sudden? He goes, yeah, there was a certain guy, he was a metal salesman, he was poor, all of a sudden he became rich. He goes to speak to the guy, he goes, tell me your story, tell me what happened. And the guy saw the rabbi was genuine, so he told him, like, I'm a salesman, I light these 2 candles. Chaim Pinto told him, because you didn't know, but unwillingly you were serving Avodah Zarah. This piece of metal the Arab gave you, it was a piece of his Avodah Zarah that he served in his house. And therefore, when he told you to light these 2 candles, what he was basically telling you was, serve my idol. And by serving his idol, you connected to his tum'ah. Because of tum'ah, that's why you had haslachah. When the guy heard about this, all of a sudden he knew all his money was a result of impure negativity. He took all the money, he gave it away to tzedakah, and when Rabbi Chaim found out that he gave all the money, he blessed him to have parnasah, the guy had parnasah. So you see that even unwittingly, tzedakah, or he threw it in the river, whatever sounds better to you more. Either way, he got rid of it.
The truth.
Either way, he got rid of it. When he got rid of it, therefore, that's what. So you see from it that even though a person doesn't know there's tumah around him, even if he doesn't know there's somewhere around his house, there's negativity. The negativity is going to affect your relationship with Hashem, can affect your parnasah, can affect everything. And therefore, our goal is that when a person sees sometimes, you don't always blame it on the mezuzah. The moment something goes wrong in a person's life, what does he do? Check the mezuzah and check the mezuzot. By the way, there's 612 other mitzvot you have to be careful in. Not only check the mezuzot right away. You check general things. And one of the things that can possibly be a reason of this negativity is because you have something in your house that's causing this negativity. Therefore, the lesson is that just like Lavan didn't do teshuvah, he got rid of the tumah. Once we take that step closer to Hashem, we get rid of the tumah. Whatever that tumah is, everybody knows which tumah he has in his own life. Once you get rid of it, we establish a special connection. Number two, even though Yaakov didn't know about the tumah has a certain effect. Moving on to talk about Lavan. Our rabbis tell us, Rabbi Musafi brings down in his sefer, that Lavan was a big ingrate. He had the opposite of Hakarat Tov. And Rabbi Musafi explains this derech mashal. He says one time there was a European businessman, and the businessman, he was concerned that he was busy working all day, even though he wasn't making a lot of money, but the work was taking a big chunk of his day. He didn't have any time to learn or to go to shul or to read Tehillim, so he decided that he's going to take 10 guys from the local kollel. He's going to hire them. He's going to listen, come to my house from now on. In my house, you're going to read Tehillim, you're going to learn Torah, I do everything in my house, and I'm going to give you a stipend. I'm going to pay you. And the moment he got these guys inside his house, a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden his business became booming. He went from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, and the guy was having a great time. And because he had such a great time, because his business was booming, he decided to give all his employees a raise. Instead of making $25 an hour, now it's $50 an hour, and everybody's happy. The only guys that didn't get a raise is who? The guys in the kollel. Even though they came along and said, listen, the reason why your business is booming is because of who? It's because of us. That's why the business is booming. And you came along and you're giving everybody else's raise, but you're not giving us a raise. The guy came along and told me, listen, because first of all, there are another 10 guys in the other place that are very eager to take your spot. So if you don't be quiet and continue doing your job, I'm going to fire you, I'm going to replace you. And second of all, he said, bottom line is, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing already? Big deal. You're reading Tehillim, anybody can read Tehillim. End of the mashal. The nimshal is that was Lavan klapei Yaakov. The rabbi tells in Midrash, which is the second source on the page, that one of the things Yaakov was doing as he was working was he was reading Tehillim. Look at the source in the Midrash on the second page, in the second source, Midrash Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman Amar, Kol Sefer Tehillim Haya Omer. Yaakov Avinu, even though you're right, David Melech wasn't yet born, he didn't write Tehillim yet, but the Avot, they knew the Tehillim, and therefore while he was working, he was reading the entire Sefer Tehillim. Lavan comes to him, and he tells him, listen, hey, even though all the Hatzlacha, by the way, we're about to find out, that when Yaakov first came to Lavan, you know how many sheep he had? He had 70 sheep. After Yaakov Avinu left, he had, as Morty said it, as he called out very abruptly, he said 600,000 sheep. So therefore, Lavan became a very wealthy man because of Yaakov, because of the Tehillim that Yaakov read. The Zohar HaKadosh says that every single change in season, from the change of the spring to the summer to the fall, winter, Yaakov would send Lavan 1,000 sheep, 1,000 cows, and 1,000 goats. So he was sending him a lot of money. And the zechut of that money came from the fact Yaakov was reading Tehillim. And what does Lavan say at the end of the day? Yaakov, what are you doing already? At the end of the day, just your Tehillim, big deal, you're reading Tehillim. Therefore, the fact that we see that not only was he a trickster, he was also an ingrate. Continuing on in the...
he was doing both, though.
He was doing a lot. He was doing a lot more than that. We're about to explain even more. You're right, he was also working. But the bottom line is he attributed the wealth to his Tehillim. If you look in the next source, in Pesukim, it says, Vayashkem, and these are the Pesukim that I want to analyze. Vayashkem Lavan baboker, Lavan got up in the morning, Vayanashik lebanav ulubanotav, he kisses his children goodbye, Vayivarech otam, and he blesses them, Vayilech vayashuv Lavan mimkomo. So first of all, in the words Vayashkem Lavan got up. Our rabbis want to learn that every time it says Vayashkem in the Torah, Vayashkem means the lashon of getting up early, very good, early in the morning. Like by Abraham, by Yishkam Abraham Baboker, it's talking about he got up early. And the rabbis are questioning, why does Lavan want to get up early in the morning? So they tell us because another midah of Lavan, another characteristic of Lavan was that he was a cheapskate. How do we know that he was a cheapskate? Because before a grandfather or a father leaves his grandchildren's house, what do you do as a grandfather? Buy them gifts, exactly. Lavan was such a cheapskate, he didn't want to get his grandkids any gifts. So therefore, what does he do? He wakes up on purpose very early in the morning when the kids, they're still like half asleep. Even though they were up, but they were half asleep. But whether grandpa gives us a gift, whether he does it right now, we're still thinking about the fact that we're sleeping more than we care about the gift. Therefore, the reason why Lavan got up early in the morning, Lavan baboker, was in order to save the couple of $100 he's going to spend on his grandkids' gifts. Therefore, Avraham Vayeshkem Lavan baboker, because he was a cheapskate. But even more, the Torah says, Vayelech vayashov Lavan lemikomo. And Lavan got up, and where did he go? He went back to his place. Now, this is something I want to focus on for a minute. What does the Torah mean when it says he wants to go back to his place? What time is it? 9:57. What does it mean he wants to go back to his place?
It's about desire.
Huh?
It's about desire.
Could be. It could be. And I think you're right, in fact. But the question is, why do I have to know that fact? The Torah is telling me that after his meeting with Yaakov, he goes back to his place. He goes back to his house. Why is that important for me to know? Meaning to say like this, as follows. Shmuel, pay attention. The Torah is a book of laws. It's a book of lesson. Every single pasuk in the Torah has to apply to me somehow. The pasukim in the Torah are there to teach me how to become a better Jew. That's what it's there for. Every pasuk in the Torah has to apply to me somehow. My question is, how does the Torah telling me that Lavan went back to his house, how does that make me a better Jew? Who cares? And if Lavan stayed over there, I don't care. If he went home, I don't care. Either way, how does the Torah telling me that Abraham, Vayashov Lavan lemikomo, he went back to his house, make me a better Jew? Is that a good question? Comes the rabbi called the Surah Hamor, and he explains as follows. He says, a person is a product of his environment. We know that already. That based on the people you hang out with, based on the people you surround yourself with, that's the type of person you're going to be. If you surround yourself with bad friends, with toxic people, with narcissists, then you will become a negative person. If you surround yourself with positive people, people that are always looking for the better, people that always want to better themselves, you will become a better person. But that's why I believe in the depths of my heart that is the soul behind going to Israel for a year. Without getting into too much detail, that's what you're doing. When a person stays in America, after high school, you still have the old friends, you have the neighborhood, all the bad tricks, how you've been raised, and sometimes it can have a bad effect on the person. But the moment a person goes to Israel, he's surrounded by good people. He's surrounded by the rabbis in the yeshiva. He's surrounded by kids that want to grow. He's surrounded by holy sites. He's surrounded by the rabbis. This has a very positive effect on the person. And therefore, it's very important for a person always to surround himself with good people, because the more good people he surrounds himself with, in the shul, in the work, by the chevra, when he surrounds himself with the good chevra, he has a very positive effect on himself the most. That's why they say, by the way, that the generation of the Midbar, Dor De'ah as they call them, the reason why they were the holiest generation is because they had the holiest people to learn from. They surrounded themselves constantly with Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron Kohen, Miriam, and Neviah. These were holy people. And therefore, because you surround yourself with holy people, you become a holy person. I encourage everybody to read the Doresh Sion, which is Rabbi Musafi's Sefer. You could see, just through the way he talks, how the fact that he went to Yeshivat Porat Yosef, which is the greatest Sephardic yeshiva in our time, you see what kind of effect it had on him. He always tells stories about the greatest rabbis, Hacham Ezra Atiyah, Hacham Yehuda Tzadka, Hacham Ben Zion Hazan, all these great people that he surrounded himself with. You see what kind of impact it had on him. Just the fact that he was surrounded by these great rabbis, it had a tremendous effect on him. Therefore, the more a person surrounds himself with good people, he will also become a better person. The Gemara says that the Torah says that what does Hashem ask from you? Ramah Hashem shoel mimecha ki'im liyir'ah. That Hashem only asks that you fear Him. It makes it sound that the Gemara is saying that Yirat Hashamayim is a small item. What is Hashem asking from you? Only to fear Him. And the Gemara says, you're right, from Moshe Rabbeinu, it's considered something small. And I don't understand the Gemara's answer. You're telling me that I have to fear Hashem. The Gemara asks, is fear Hashem something small? No, for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's small. So that doesn't help me. For Moshe Rabbeinu, it's easy. For me, it's very hard to have Yirat Shamayim. Says the rabbis, no. It's small for the people that were around Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu had a tremendous Yirat Shamayim, it affected the other people. And therefore, the fact that we surround ourselves with good people and positivity all the time, as a product of your environment, you're also going to be a good person. Going back to our parasha, who is Lavan surrounding himself with for the past 20-something years? Yaakov Avinu. And you would assume that since Yaakov Avinu was the top holy person at that time, you would assume that Lavan would learn from his ways. It says in Parasha, in the very beginning, what does it say? It says, Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheba vayelech Harana. And it's a very confusing, Vayetze, Vayelech, just telling me that he went. Why you tell me Vayetze? What does Rashi say? Because the fact that the tzaddik left his place, it makes a roshim, it makes a impression on the place. And the Hidush with Yaakov is that even though Yaakov was the type of guy that didn't do any kiruv, Bishlama, his grandfather Abraham, he was the type of person that changed people. Therefore, if Abraham left the place, I understand how Abraham can have an effect on people because he was changing people. But Yaakov, what was he doing? He wasn't doing anything. He was Ishtam Yoshev Ohalim. He was just sitting and learning. Kamash Malan, that even Yaakov, just sitting and learning, it made a tremendous impression on the people. And therefore, you can learn a lot from Abraham. From Yaakov, it says by Rabbi, when he was leaving, going from Yerushalayim to Egypt, becoming the chief rabbi of Egypt, his students were so upset the fact that he was leaving that when the taxi came to pick him up, to take him to the airport to go to Egypt, they laid down in front of his taxi. Lahavdil, you know what it's like? Remember on the Thanksgiving parade when you had the pro Hamas laying down in the middle of the street? Lahavdil. In order to stop the parade from happening, Lahavdil. The students of Rabbi Vadia would lay down in front of the taxi to make sure that he doesn't go. Why? Because they noticed that once Rabbi Vadia leaves Yerushalayim, you're going to feel the fact that he left. The same thing with Yaakov. Yaakov, the moment he left, it made a roshim on the place. And therefore, Lavan, you had a personal audience with Yaakov. Yaakov doesn't have any students at this point. It's just him, his kids, and Lavan. You would assume that Lavan would become the protege of Yaakov. Look how much I can learn from this big tzaddik. What does the Torah come along and tell us? Pasuk says, Vayashov Lavan Mkomo. Lavan went back to his place. Says the Torah Amor, he's not learning his place as a geography type of standpoint. He's learning the Mkomo as what? Back to his old ways. The fact that Lavan was with Yaakov and he wasn't influenced by Yaakov, that means he went back to his place. He was the same exact person before Yaakov came to after Yaakov came. Meaning to say that Yaakov's influence is so strong, you have to fight his influence in order not to be affected. Just by being around Yaakov, by being parv, you're able to grow. Lavan had to have a conscious decision not to change because Yaakov was around. Therefore, the Torah goes out of its way to tell us by Yashov Lavan Mimkomo, he went back to its place versus Yaakov. Pasuk says by Yaakov halach nedarko. By Yaakov, he was a halech. He continued growing. He was the guy that always climbed the ladder. That no matter what he achieved in life, he always said there's always room to grow. Obviously, the musar is that when a person is exposed to greatness, when a person is exposed to positive influence, he has to keep an open mind. He has to come along and he has to say, I'm willing to grow, I'm willing to learn. And a person can never be stagnant. Like we mentioned many times, that life, from my friend, life is a down escalator. If a person is not constantly trying, it's like in business. If you're not making money, you are losing money. So too when it comes to ruhaniyut. If you're not making ruhaniyut, you're losing ruhaniyut. And therefore, since life is an upside down, not upside down, but a downward escalator, when a person doesn't make a conscious decision to climb, he's automatically losing it. But that's exactly what Yaakov was. He was a guy that was halech, he was walking. But Lavan, Yashav Mkomo, Lavan went back to his place. Finally, as a conclusion over here, by Haggadah Shel Pesach. We have a while till Pesach, but it's kedai, because one of the things that we read is that what? We say in Haggadah Shel Pesach that Arami Oved Avi Vayered Mitzrayim. That's in Pasha Kitavo. Now what are we saying? We're making a connection. What the connection is that because my father, Yaakov Avinu, because he worked for Lavan, Arami Oved Avi, that my father was Oved Arami, the trickster, Vayered Mitzrayim. And as a result, we went down to Egypt. So it sounds like the Torah's connecting. What's the Torah connecting? It's connecting the fact that Yaakov worked for Lavan. As a direct result, we went down to Egypt. Now what's the question? There's no connection. The fact that we went down to Egypt was many years after Yaakov finished working for Lavan. So why does the Torah go out of its way to tell me the reason why we went down to Egypt was because Arami Oved Avi? What are you talking about? It happened many years after that.
600,000.
Oh, that's the real answer I want to get to. But before that.
The Kina.
What's the Kina?
That became the younger.
Oh, very good. Yaakov Rab, you remember. So the first answer I want to say from the Rabbi of Maran the Beit Yosef. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Rav. He comes along and he says, yes, in fact, that we went down to Egypt was a direct result of Lavan. Why is the direct result of Lavan? Because think about it for a second. Why did we end up in Egypt in the first place? Sel Yosef. Because the brothers were jealous of Yosef. Now let's say, go back to the way things were supposed to be. Let's say Lavan never switched the sisters and really Yaakov married Rachel first. Who would have been his firstborn? Yosef would have been his firstborn. And if Yosef is the firstborn, would the brothers have gotten jealous of him? No, because he's the firstborn. The firstborn deserves to have the extra colored coat. And therefore, the fact that Lavan switched Rachel with Leah, and turns out that Yosef ended up being one of his last kids, now it created an animosity between Yosef and the brothers. Now the brothers sold Yosef, and that's how we ended up in Egypt. But if he never ended up switching, Yosef ends up the Bechor, there'll be no selling, no going out to Egypt whatsoever. And therefore, yes, the reason of Vayetze Mitzrayma, the reason why we went down to Egypt is a direct result of Aram Yoved David. Because Laban switched the sisters, that's how we ended up in Egypt, because he sold Yosef. Because if he would have switched, Yosef would have been the Bechor. That is the answer of Yaakov Berav. The second answer comes from Hatam Sofer. He comes over and he says, on a deeper note, he says that in Egypt, Paro had 3 advisors. Anybody can name his advisors? Yitro, Bilam, and Eov. Very good. So 3 advisors. We know that Yitro was a runaway type of guy. Anything that happened bad with the Jewish people, any negative comments, he ran away. Eov was a silent type, but Bilam was the guy that was prosecuting the most. So the reason why we suffered in Egypt was because of Bilam. All the bad gezerot of the back-breaking labor and throwing the kids in the river, that was all Bilam's advice. Who was Bilam? The rabbis tell us. Hatam Sofer has a connection that Bilam but he was the grandson of Lavan. Somehow over there's a family connection. Bilam is the grandson of Lavan. And to go even deeper, the Arizal says that Bilam had a nitzot neshama of Lavan. So he was a gilgul of Lavan even. So therefore it says Hatam Sofer, now I understand. The reason why we're Vayetze Mitzrayma, the reason why we suffered in Egypt was a direct result of Lavan. So therefore when the Pasuk says, Arami Oved Avi, the reason why we're Yered Mitzrayim, the reason why we're suffering in Egypt was indeed because of Lavan, either because of Bilam being his grandson and he was the cause for all our trouble, or because he was indeed the Lavan and through Gilgul Neshama. And therefore, yes, the suffering of us in Egypt was because of Arami Oved Abi. That is the answer of Hatam Sofer. But B'Shukhem, which is our last few minutes, I want to say over here what I saw from the Baal Shem Tov, which is the answer that David already said so beautifully. We come along and we say as follows. As I mentioned before, when Yaakov first came to Lavan, how many sheep did he have? He had 70. When he left, he had 600,000. So it was a tremendous financial gain. Now, our rabbis tell us as follows. Just try to follow the last few minutes. If you want to go into the world of souls, we have to understand something. That the evil side, the dark side, Sitra Hara, whatever you want to call it, Kohat Tuma, they always want to keep holy souls in captivity. Why do they want to do that? Because as long as they have holy souls in captivity, they feed off of it and it stops Mashiach from coming. So therefore, they're always in favor of holding souls in captivity. And anytime there's a holy soul, the Strachla tries to grab onto it. Now, where do these souls come from? It's a direct result of Adam HaRishon eating from the tree. Since Adam HaRishon, in the realm of Kabbalah, he had all the souls inside of him. The moment he ate from the tree, this caused the souls to depart from his body, to escape from his body. And once they escape from the body, the Star Hara is able to latch and grab onto them. Now, once they latch and grab onto them, they need to put them somewhere. You can't just latch and grab on. You need to place them somewhere. The rabbis tell us that after these souls, these holy souls, in fact, the initial 70 souls that we went down to Egypt with, which is basically the nucleus or the beginning of the Jewish nation, Yaakov, the Shevatim, and their children, that was the original nucleus of the Jewish people. It all encompassed 70 souls. These were the 70 souls that came out of Adam Rishon, that they were released from Adam Rishon. And therefore, in order to capture these souls, the Sitracha need to put them somewhere. So originally, the rabbis tell us that in order to make a tikkun on the souls, they came back first, after Adam Rishon, Hashem let them come back where? Into Dor HaMabul, which is the flood. So they came back in Dor HaMabul, but it was going wrong, didn't make a tikkun. They came back again where? In Dor HaPelaga, which was the Tower of Babel, didn't work. Then they came back where? In Sodom, didn't work from that time also. Therefore, after it didn't work for a 3-time tikkun, the rabbis tell us that the Sitra Hara grabbed onto them. And it put them specifically where? In the sheep of Lavan. So therefore, actually, in fact, Lavan was part of this team of the Sitra Hara that he held in captivity the souls of the Jewish people to start the nation. That's why he had 70 sheep. 70 sheep keneged the 70 souls of the Jewish people. Now, eventually, says the Baal Shem Tov, that was Yaakov Avinu's goal into going down and marrying the daughters of Lavan, was not only to marry the daughters of Lavan, but also to extract from these sheep the original 70 souls. And that's why the Torah tells us that at the same time, or after Yaakov left Lavan, how many sheep did he have? 600,000, which is exactly the amount of souls of people that we left Egypt with. We started with 70 and we finished off with 600,000. That's how many people there were when we received the Torah by Har Sinai. Therefore, that is the connection. The reason why Yaakov was even by the house of Lavan was in order to extract these nishamot. Says the Baal Shem Tov in the source number 4. He says, I'll read you his words because they're unbelievable. Ki lo rak nishamot yud bet rashei shivatim hayu tumunot et Lavan harami. Not only the 12 tribes were captured by Lavan, the trickster, Kol shishim ribon nishamot Yisrael shitgalgelu b'Mitzrayim. It was all 600,000 souls that came down to Egypt. Yitgalgelu te'ila b'tzod Lavan. They all came back in the beginning in the sheep Lavan. Ad sheba Yaakov Avinu, to Yaakov Avinu came, v'hotzim Lavan kol hatzon sheyu behem nishmot halalu. He came and he extracted all the souls. ובזכותו, because of Yaakov, because of Yaakov, these souls, they began to have their tikkun, they began to fix whatever sin happened with Adam Rishon. The final tikkun of these souls were after the Jewish people, they got the Torah. But my question was, and with this we're going to finish, why only by Yaakov was it a tzat tikkun? Why was it only a small tikkun? Why didn't Yaakov make the full tikkun? Why didn't we even need to go down to Egypt in the first place? Rabbi has explained unbelievable. The very final source is as follows. The Chachamim, they have a tremendous ability in their hands. It's called koach hamishush. What does koach hamishush mean? They have a certain power that comes out of their hands. The great rabbis, they have this energy, positive energy that emits from their hands. And zelu madze asa Elokim, I'm rushing because this is important for me to say, that just like tzaddikim have a power, a positive energy that emits from their hands, the Rishayim have the same thing. They have this negative energy that emits from their hands. Yaakov was very afraid that after he made this tremendous tikkun, he began with 70 souls in the sheep of Lavan. That after 22 years of working, finally he had 600,000 souls that he successfully extracted from these sheep of Lavan. Now Yaakov is flying high. He says, as long as I could escape Lavan, I made a tikkun of the souls of the Jewish people. I made a tikkun. So therefore, I have to be very careful that if Lavan shows up, I cannot let him touch anything that I have. Why? Because since Lavan has a negative koach of mishush, I'm afraid that if he touches something, he's going to ruin all the work that I did. Now pay attention to the Pesukim. When Lavan comes to Yaakov and he accuses him, he goes, oh, lama ganafte et Elokai, why did you steal my idols? Yaakov says, no problem. Go check if I stole anything, but listen, don't touch anything. Because if I know if you touch my item, you're going to re-inject all the tumah that I worked so hard to do. So look at the Pesukim. Yaakov tells Lavan, very last source on the page, he says, anybody that stole your idols are not going to live. He tells them what are the words he uses in bold. Hakerna ma'imadi. What's hakerna mean? Notice. What does it mean notice? Just look. Look, don't touch. Don't touch anything. Just walk inside the tents and look with your hands. Well, look with your eyes. And all of a sudden, Yaakov gets very upset at Lavan, and he says, V'yiharav Yaakov. Look at the next pasuk. He tells me he got very angry. Why? What does the pasuk say? Ki mishashta et kol kelai. What does it mean, ki mishashta? You touched everything. In the beginning, he told Lavan, just look. And Lavan, what did he do? He touched everything. Ki mishashta et kol kelai. I just told you to look. You went ahead and you touched everything. Lavan, he successfully, I'm not saying he took back, because I don't really know what happened, but he ruined all the tikkun that Yaakov worked so hard those 20 years to make. And therefore, that's why the Baal Shem Tov tells us that Yaakov only made what's called exat tikkun. He made a small tikkun. The final tikkun only happened once they got the Torah, but if Lavan never touched anything, we would have made a full tikkun. Therefore, our rabbis tell us the reason why we ended up in Egypt in the first place was because a direct result of Lavan Arami. Therefore, go back to the original thing that I told you. Arami oved David vayed Mitzrayim. What is the connection between Lavan and going down to Egypt? The answer is, if he wouldn't have touched anything, Yaakov would have made the final tikkun. If he made the final tikkun, we wouldn't need to go down to Egypt. Now that Lavan was kimishachat kol kelai, that he touched everything and he ruined the tikkun that I made. Now we need to go down to Egypt. Now we need to receive the Torah, and by the Torah would be the final tikkun. And therefore, yes, as a direct result of Lavan and me touching, Vayetze the Bnei Yisrael in Mitzrayim. And therefore, that is small tidbits of information of exactly like the title of this shiur. Lavan, even though his name is white, he's not so white after all. Shabbat shalom.